This object is the RAF uniform of Polish fighter pilot Tadeusz Felk, who is a Spitfire pilot as part of 317 Squadron. It's one of the most iconic objects in the museum collection, and it has a brilliant story that's linked to World War II and Stalag Luft 3. Felk was a pilot that trained at RAF Kingstown in Carlisle. He did his basic training there, but many Polish fighter pilots had previous battle experience during the Battle of Poland and the Battle of France.
He was a quiet family man. He was a good, reliable neighbour, and people generally liked him and respected him. He was born in Warsaw in Poland in 1919. When World War II broke out in 1939, he was 20. He'd left school and he'd become an air cadet at the Polish Air Force Training Centre at Borowino Airfield. Well, they left Borowino in August 1939, and then they travelled firstly to France. So he arrived in France in October 1939, where the French were supposed to train them, but in the event they never did. And in about January 1940, they were asked whether any of them wanted to come to England to train as pilots, and quite a few of them obviously took that up. My dad arrived in England in Southampton in February 1940. He then actually started flying training in Carlisle, which is where he met my mother, in January 1941. Then he was stationed in Montrose in Scotland in April 41. Moved up to Edinburgh in October of 41, where he started flying Hurricanes. Then he had a period based in the northeast from December 41, and in March 42, while still stationed near Newcastle, he started flying Spitfires. July 3rd, 1943, he married my mother in Ruislip, and then less than 3 weeks later, while he was stationed in Perranporth, that's when he was shot down over France.
And he set off on a mission escorting Boston bombers to Lille, where he was attacked by Focke-Wulf 190s from an elite German squadron. He was shot down and landed in France, and was then taken to Stalag Luft 3, which was famous for the story of the Great Escape.
Clearly, Stalag Luft 3 is famous for the tunnel escapes. He did help with the escape effort. Most people in the camp helped distribute sand from the tunnels and that sort of stuff. And there were all sorts of other ancillary tasks that people were asked to do, not least of which was losing some of the boards out of their beds so they could shore up the tunnels. Surprisingly, life within the camp was not how people would expect it to be. Part of the German thinking with enabling things to be brought into the camp was that if they kept the prisoners busy with sports and recreation, that they would be less inclined to escape. The other thing that they were quietly getting on with, well, nobody thought they were, was actually digging the tunnels for the escape. He wasn't liberated until 1945, but part of the prisoner of war story that a lot of people aren't aware of is a thing called the Long March. Stalag Luft 3 was in eastern Poland, so when Russia invaded, when they headed west towards Germany, the camp was relatively close to the Russian border. So basically the Germans dismantled the camp and they marched all the prisoners right across Poland and into Germany, and in fact by the time they were liberated, They'd marched as far as Bremen, which is a good way through Germany, so they'd walked a considerable distance, and quite a few of the prisoners died during that period. It was middle of winter, it was very arduous. They were sleeping in fields and ditches and farmhouses, wherever they could find somewhere relatively warm. So they'd got nearly as far as Bremen when they met a British tank regiment who actually liberated them. And the RAF, with really amazing organisation, he was flown home within about 7 or 8 days of being liberated. So he was actually back in Britain just over a week after they encountered the tanks. He was repatriated from Germany, returned to Carlisle. He remained in the RAF for a short period until he was fully demobbed, but then returned fully to Carlisle to his wife, and they bought a house on Dunmail Drive and then had 2 children, my sister and I. He got a job as a weaver at Ferguson Brothers at Home Headworks in Denton Home, where he worked until he died in 1964.